skin to skin between sort of mother and father and baby will really promote that oxytocin, that love hormone.
That's a really helpful thing for parents to know, is that you are the expert in your baby, and as you get to know them, you can trust that they're going to tell you what they need and that you'll pick up on that.
As a parent, you've just really got to trust your instincts. That's your baby. Just because that clock says they've not fed for 2.5 hours, go with them.
Ngala acknowledges Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people as the traditional custodians of Australia and recognises their continuing connection to land, waters and community.
Hi Hannah.
Hi Jen.
Welcome back to episode 6 of Parenting with Ngala. Today we're discussing feeding as a really important bonding experience between caregivers and baby. We do want to touch on the fact that there are many ways that you can feed a baby and different reasons for doing those. This episode is not about questioning decisions that you've made or have had to make. If you want detailed information about how to breastfeed and what to do when things go wrong, please check the Australian Breastfeeding Association website or reach out to a lactation consultant. And just know that no matter how you feed, it is an important bonding experience with your baby.
So we have Charlotte here today to discuss bonding through feeding. So Charlotte, tell us a little bit about who you are and what role you have at Ngala.
So I am a child health nurse at Ngala and also a parent of 3. So at Ngala, we support families and parents who can stay at our facility with all aspects of parenting. So there'll be child development, sleep, feeding, attachment, bonding, infant mental health. And we support families with a really unique approach. We sort of have a really thorough sort of assessment with them, see what they want to achieve, and we just work together to try and support them to do that.
That's beautiful. Great. Sounds like a very holistic perspective.
Give us a little bit of information around feeding as a bonding experience between caregiver and baby.
So feeding is huge in terms of attachment and bonding, absolutely huge. And it's one of the very, very first things that a baby will do with its caregiver. So that is a perfect opportunity when they're first born to feed your baby and start developing that attachment and that bond. So it starts with skin to skin. So skin to skin helps to regulate the baby's breathing, their heart rate, and it also really helps them to adapt outside of the womb. So that initial sort of bonding experience with that when they're first born is really important to sort of set them up.
Yeah.
And not only mothers can do it, we really encourage sort of dads to do that as well.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
So even, say, if a mother plans to breastfeed, skin to skin is still really beneficial for the dad, even though he can't breastfeed.
100%. Yeah, 100%. And it doesn't matter what sort of method of feeding you use, you can still have that skin to skin. And even sort of when you get home as well, we really recommend that, not just when they're first born, sort of as they're developing, because it really helps sort of calm them down as well.
Yeah, it really regulates their heartbeat. Yeah. And we know that having the baby on the mother or the father, their heart rates actually will sync up. And it will be really nice and relaxed, and also breathing. Yeah. So that's a really nice way to calm everyone, hopefully, if everyone's feeling nice and calm.
Yeah. And as a midwife, you would be very familiar with that recommendation.
Skin to skin and the golden hour, they call it, after baby's born, which is what I think most parents will strive for in terms of after the birth. It's not always possible, which can be really devastating, but it is, what we would encourage. And also knowing that if it doesn't happen for you in that moment, you haven't missed the opportunity to do it at a later date and to a later time when both mum and baby or dad and baby are available and can do it together.
Absolutely. And you can do it sort of prior to a feed, after a feed, sort of during the feed. So it doesn't, it's about not putting that pressure on yourself. As long as you sort of can do that, that's really sort of positive experience for both you and baby.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm hearing that skin to skin is almost like a precursor for that bonding experience of feeding. Absolutely. So it's a really, really lovely strategy that parents can do in the early, from the first, hour after birth, but even beyond has benefits.
Absolutely, yeah. And that time when you are feeding, as well as having that skin to skin, the baby, you can sort of talk to the baby, sing to the baby, have eye contact. They're feeling sort of that closeness with you. So that is also really contributes to that sort of bonding and attachment, regardless of that feeding method.
The smell of you as well.
Yeah, absolutely. The smell of you.
Yeah, that's great. So thinking about skin to skin and feeding in all different ways, What would be the best way to feed your baby?
So the best way to feed your baby would be, ideally, an ideal world. I know people have different sort of commitments and different things, but in a really calm environment, no distractions like phones, televisions. Some calmer music is absolutely fine, whatever you sort of want to listen to, but make sure you're comfortable. And in the early days, this can be really difficult because you might have quite a lot of visitors. So it's quite difficult to sort of not be distracted with them when you're feeding your baby. But if you can sort of feed them when there is that no distraction, so you're really just focusing on you and your baby, nice and close, looking into their eyes, that is the ideal optimum.
Yeah.
Experience.
I also feel like from a physical perspective as well, like if if you're not set up comfortably ergonomically, which means how your body is sitting in space, that can also, you're potentially feeding your baby. We've talked about 12 times in a 24-hour period in that newborn period, they might be needing very high-frequency feeds. So you also want to be physically comfortable, whether that's feeding with a bottle or feeding with the breasts. So sitting in a comfortable chair where your back is supported, your arms are supported, your baby.
Having some water next to you so you can remain hydrated. It's a long time sometimes for those really little babies to do a feed. Going to the toilet before you sit down to do it, just making sure that you're in the best space possible.
Having everything to hand, and just being sort of able to just fully immerse yourself in that experience of feeding, and just getting to know your baby, getting to know what they like, how they like to be fed, just that sort of whole thing really.
Because some babies, they depending on their position in the womb, they might come out and have a little bit of tightness in their body, so they might actually have a preference for being held on different angles and sides as well, which we might not always click into, but it's something to think about. What is their preference, and obviously if there is a tightness in certain muscles on one side of the neck and that's impacting feeding, then there are physios that can help with that, but that's something else to consider.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, so you've mentioned trying to have that, being really mindful, really. That's what you're kind of touching on, being mindful in that feeding experience. It's not always possible.
It's not always possible.
Toddlers, just feeling absolutely like you maybe want to zone out and maybe watch some TV, visitors, feeding out and about.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not about being prescriptive and saying you've got to do this every single feed, but just sort of being aware that to do that sort of
find those opportunities.
Yeah, find those opportunities, find those moments that you can do that. And if you feel like you want to do that, then do it.
Yeah, when you have the capacity. Say, yep, I'm going to do it for this feed, but then maybe not for the next feed. And that's okay. It's not about being perfect.
Absolutely. It's not about being perfect.
A more balanced kind of perspective of when it's possible. I remember with my second born, I used to actually really enjoy the really early morning feed because it was before the whole house was awake. It was before the street was awake. You had a little bit of light coming in the window. It was just, even though I knew that I would be very tired in a couple of hours' time because it was maybe 4 a.m., but that was a very special time for
absolutely. And that sort of also leads on to when you do have this new baby and everybody wants to see this baby and visit you. And it's about sort of being empowered to say, I want to feed my baby. And just because I'm not breastfeeding, that doesn't give other people sort of the freedom to then say, oh, well, I'll feed the baby. That's still your time to bond and to have that experience and, to build that attachment through feeding. So I think that's really important as well.
Would you say it's important for parents to be the ones who feed their baby?
100%, especially in those early days. And I appreciate it's not always possible, like with other children and, different commitments, different things. And if you sort of are really overly tired and you just need to get a break, then I totally sort of understand that. But where you can in those early days.
As much as possible.
But I actually feel like parents feel that they have to sort of almost let other people feed them. Because it's a nice thing to do. But actually they could be sterilising the bottles, they could be washing up, they could be, giving your house a bit of a clean. There's other things or even have a cuddle once you've sort of finished that feed.
Do the burping perhaps.
Perhaps do that. But just that feed is just such a special time. So when you can get it, then take the opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, Charlotte, are there any things that we might have to be aware of in terms of safety and feeding?
We see quite a lot of prop feeding. So that would be feeding the baby. So you sort of use something to sort of prop it upright and then sort of feed it, just putting the bottle in. So you're not really very physically close to the baby. That's quite a dangerous way to feed the baby because it's a bit of a choking hazard. The baby can't control the swallowing the milk. So that's a choke. It could aspirate. There's quite a lot of sort of dangers to doing that. And also it's taken away that sort of bonding experience with having that baby in your arms as well. So I appreciate some people sort of might do it.
Twin mums, I think.
Yeah, you know, it's really difficult. So we sort of totally empathise with that. But in an ideal world, you know, it's just not safe.
Yeah.
So we would never sort of advocate sort of prop feeding.
Yeah.
And you mentioned choking and aspirating. So choking is something that we can hear, but aspirating is something that we actually don't always hear, is it?
So that is when the milk can sort of go into a bit of the baby's lung. So that is really quite dangerous.
Yeah, and it can be silent.
Yes, it can be silent as well. So those risks alone are sort of really scary. It also can cause, as the baby's a bit older, tooth decay because the milk can sort of stay in the mouth instead of being swallowed.
Yeah.
There's this bathing the mouth in milk. Yeah.
So that's not good because can have quite a bit of sugar in. I shouldn't really say that.
I think as well with babies being fed flat on a surface, say a cot or a bassinet, we do know that has an increased risk of ear infections as well due to the shape of their ears and the milk pooling in the back of their mouth. And the same goes for the decay in the gums and stuff like that.
100%. And actually, you know, would you want to be fed lie down?
No.
You know, that baby can't swallow. It really struggles to then bring the wind up. So it's just not nice for that baby to be sort of having to sort of navigate all of that whilst on its back.
Yeah.
It's just not a good experience for that baby.
And it can be probably quite hard to swallow when you're in that position. Try to swallow with your chin up.
Yeah,
it's pretty hard.
It's really tough.
Yeah.
And they can't control this milk's coming out at this sort of speed, and they sort of can't keep up with it.
Yeah.
So you're not responsive feeding by doing that. You're just sort of putting that bottle in and letting it flow.
Yeah.
So then when we are looking at the position of the baby, so we've talked about bonding, but also then the position of the baby when we are bottle feeding, what are we looking for there? What are we trying to mimic? What posture are we in?
So we're trying to sort of mimic, everyone will be very slightly different, but what we would suggest is the baby is sort of in your arm like this, nice and close, and sort of quite upright, not sort of flat, quite upright. So you can sort of maintain that eye contact, and so the baby can sort of almost control how much milk they're sort of taking in, and you can sort of see that quite clearly.
You want them upright enough that they're able to swallow.
100%.
And if you think about how we swallow, we don't lie down flat and swallow. We will sit up and be able to swallow that way. And so having them up in the crook of your arm, nice and high, is a good idea.
Yeah.
Also, I suppose if we think about when a baby breastfeeds, they're often taking breaks. Like we see that when we watch a baby breastfeed, that they might suckle, then they might pause, suckle again.
Yeah.
So we could almost consider that as well if we're using a bottle.
Absolutely. And it's about being responsive. And if you can see what your baby's doing, then you can do that. If you can see that they're sort of, fussing and trying to move away from the bottle, they're telling you, I want a little break. So you can take it out and then, maybe give them a little wind or just a break and then put it back in again. Yeah. It's about just following their lead and not just sort of feeding them for sort of half an hour. And that also really helps with bringing their wind up as well, and it stops them from sort of vomiting or getting too much into their stomachs. Yeah. So by doing that, you're really sort of reading into your baby's cues and, giving them breaks when they want it.
Being responsive.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It comes down to so many things, that responsiveness. And even, I suppose, if you're trying to offer the baby the bottle or the breast and they are struggling to latch or take the bottle and they're getting a little bit frustrated or dysregulated, does that happen, and what could parents do in those moments?
And that sort of really feeds into sort of feeding cues when babies are their early cues of being hungry. So it'll be sort of maybe looking around, what we call rooting, with their mouths open, putting their fist to their mouth. They're sort of really early signs that they're getting hungry. Then the middle and late signs would be sort of getting really agitated, getting very jerky movements, and a late sign would be crying. So it's about getting to that baby to feed them with those early cues, when they're sort of ready, they're calm, they're relaxed, and they're much more likely to sort of be ready to take that feed. Whereas if they get to the stage where they're just really upset, you're going to really struggle with that feed.
And then you could go back, I suppose, to skin if that does happen.
Yeah, so that's what we would say, sort of just have a reset, put the baby sort of down, have a bit of skin to skin, or just give them a cuddle, sort of try and calm them without the feed, and then try again.
Yes.
Yeah, it's totally okay to have a reset.
100%.
We might be conscious of the clock, and thinking, oh, when was their last feed? But we've got to remember that even, there can be variability there. And, we don't want our baby to get super, super hungry, but we also don't want to get so fixated on the clock, I suppose,
100%.
that then we're just like, they have to have this, and then we're getting dysregulated. They're going to pick up on that, and it's going to be trickier for everyone.
I think as well, as a parent, you've just really got to trust your instinct. It's actually your baby. Just because that clock says they've not fed for 2.5 hours, go with them. Just go with them. It's not, they're going to be fine. If they're not showing you signs, or if they don't want the feed, then try again when they are showing you those signs. That's how we are being responsive to the babies.
Yeah. It's a bit of a team effort there as well. Like, our job is to kind of be aware and to offer, but we also then are being respectful of what that baby, needs in that moment.
Yeah. And it's about, if you do a feed up, and they normally sort of have a certain amount and they don't drink it all, that's okay.
Yeah.
And it's just sort of saying to parents, sometimes we don't finish all of our dinner.
Yep.
Or, we are hungry at different times. Sometimes babies, can be like that as well.
And they're doing a lot of growing.
They're doing a lot of
developmental
growing. A lot of brain development.
Yeah. And so sometimes they're going to be hungrier than they were the day before.
Absolutely, yeah.
And different times of the day.
Yeah.
Might be having a growth spurt.
But it can be quite stressful as a parent when you're like, what's going on? Why is my baby all of a sudden drinking more or not drinking as much? And you do start to question, am I doing it all right? And that's when it becomes really tricky. And that's when I think you go back to those cues. What is my baby trying to tell me?
And that's, always look at your baby as a whole. Okay, what are they doing? Are they having wet nappies? Are they having dirty nappies? Do they seem happy? Are they putting weight on? It's not about sort of being fixated. Feeding is crucial to their brain development. And we really want them obviously to feed, but we've got to look at the whole baby and just go with them.
Yeah. That comes up so much on the parenting line, particularly say with breastfeeding, because with bottle feeding you can see how much is being taken, but with breastfeeding we don't have x-ray vision, we don't necessarily know. But looking at those other things like wet nappies, following their curve, they don't need to be on the highest curve on their chart, but following sort of their growth curve. If they were a smaller baby but they're staying along that curve, then that is that's showing us good signs that they are getting enough milk. And I often say babies are pretty clever. If they take a bit too much milk, well, it'll come back up.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely.
And I like what you said about looking at the baby as a whole and as an individual, because they are all different. And we are all different. And so that's a really helpful thing for parents to know, is that you are the expert in your baby. And as you get to know them, you can trust that they're going to tell you what they need and that you'll pick up on that.
Yeah, 100%. And I think parents, they just have got a lot of self-doubt sometimes with things like that and feeding. And I think sort of friends, relatives, social media, they put a lot of pressure on themselves to have this perfect baby. And it's their baby and it's going to be different to someone else's baby, but it's about trusting your intuition. That's your baby. You've created that and you know what's best for them. You might need a bit of help along the way.
And you're going to learn. You're going to learn. Like, again, in the beginning, you might not exactly know, but you're going to try some things out.
And you'll know people who you can ask. So you'll have people that you trust that you can ask.
Yeah.
And if you don't have those people, please call us on the parenting line. That's our job. But knowing who and knowing what your values are around parenting and around feeding, and then following that.
And actually nobody knows what they're doing when they first have a baby. No one really truly knows until they've got this baby in their arms. Then that's when they start sort of navigating their way through.
That's right.
So everyone's in the same boat.
So Charlotte, other than skin to skin, what are some other ways that parents, caregivers can bond with their baby?
Okay, so these are really simple and anybody can do them. So smiling at your baby, showing them love and warmth, talking to your baby. Reading is incredible to do. playing with them.
And what would that look like?
Play could even just be like a peekaboo or just really simple.
Your face.
Just your face. Like they're so easily pleased. Like it doesn't matter what you do. Babies love looking at their parents. They love listening to their parents. And because they can know your voice from sort of 20 weeks in the womb. So they've already built this connection with their caregivers when they're here. So anything, they're just really happy to be in your company.
Yeah,
and to
parents
look at
are
your
their
face.
Favourite toy.
Yeah, so you don't need loads of toys. You just need you, really. But anything like that is perfect and will really sort of enhance that development, that bonding.
And so much of that can be done while you're feeding a baby. You can be talking to them. You can be just jibber jabbering. You might
sing a song.
Yeah. It's that mindfulness and being present in some of those moments. Yeah.
And sometimes when babies do get sort of a little bit older, what they can do is, because their brains are just growing at such an incredible rate, they can sometimes get a little bit overwhelmed and they can then sort of look away. So it's just being mindful that baby is just taking a little break and they're going to come back to you. So yeah, I think it's good for parents to be aware of that.
Yeah.
As well.
They also do that as a way of exploring as well. They'll look away and then look back to their caregiver and, that safety. So, yeah, it's good to know there's always multiple reasons why babies will do lots of different things, and sometimes we just have to guess what the reason is, and your guess is the best guess as a parent.
Yeah.
Once the parent is able to see that their baby is full and they're kind of done with that feed, what would they do following that to keep that bonding experience going?
So after they've finished that whole sort of process, like with the burping and the feeding, they can just keep them in their arms and give them a cuddle. That's still really, babies still sort of might want that. They're always going to sort of want to have that closeness and that cuddle. And so you don't feel that you have to put that baby down or give it to somebody else, or, it's your baby. So you can't spoil that baby by holding it too much. That is a myth that we just want to get rid of.
Yeah.
So yeah, just keep that baby in your arms.
Well, Charlotte, it's been absolutely delightful having you in today to talk about
thank you.
bonding through feeding. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to Parenting with Ngala. The topics covered in our podcast are general in nature, and the information might not suit everyone. If you're in Western Australia and would like to chat about a specific challenge, you can talk directly to the Ngala Parenting Line by calling 9368 9368. For all other links and resources, check out the Ngala website and the show notes below. Thank you again, and see you next time.